Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's Taiwan Bridges keynote speech in Academia Sinica. It is our great privilege to host today's session, which features insights and perspectives from Ms. Nadia Murad, the 2018 Nobel Peace Laureate from Iraq. Before we proceed, the president of Academia Sinica, Dr. James Liao, will deliver the opening remarks and formally welcome today's speaker. Please welcome President Liao.
Distinguished guests, colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. And good afternoon. It's a wonderful day, sun begin to come out. It's my great privilege to welcome you to today's special session on Taiwan Bridges event. It's co-hosted by Academia Sinica and the International Peace Foundation. And we are deeply honored to have Ms. Nadia Murad, the 2018 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, as our second invited speaker of this Taiwan Bridges program. Among the Nobel laureates participating in this event, this series of events through Academia Sinica, Ms. Murad is the only Peace Prize laureate. This distinction reflects the unique perspective she brings to our community. And Ms. Nadia Murad is a human rights activist who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2018, as I mentioned, as a leading advocate for survivors of genocide and sexual violence after enduring the horrific Yazidi Genocide in Iraq, carried out by the Islamic State, also known as ISIS. In 2014, Nadia was captured by ISIS, forced into slavery, and subjected to repeated abuse until she managed to escape. Since then, she has shared her story to raise awareness about gender-based violence and has become a powerful advocate for women and communities facing extreme brutality and abuse. In her advocacy work, Nadia partnered with Amal Clooney, who is George Clooney's wife, to hold ISIS accountable, launched her nonprofit organization known as Nadia's Initiative to help rebuild communities in crisis and to end conflict-related sexual violence, and collaborated on initiatives that provide enhanced access to care and reparations for survivors. Nadia Murad also authored the New York Times bestselling memoir, The Last Girl, My Story of Captivity and My Fight Against the Islamic State. For Academia Sinica today, it's our event especially meaningful, while scholarship often seeks to analyze and explain. Ms. Murad's experience reminds us to consider how knowledge can translate into action, or what we typically call science for action. And Ms. Murad's engagement in global affairs has helped address the real-world complexities of human rights, justice, and post-conflict recovery. Today's session will take place in a dialogue format. We are pleased to have Professor Mei-Hua Chen, Dean of the College of Social Sciences at National Sun Yat-sen University, serving as today's moderator. Her expertise in gender studies, social inequality, and transitional justice will help guide a meaningful and thought-provoking exchange. In a moment, Professor Chen will take the stage to offer a more comprehensive introduction of Ms. Murad and begin the conversation. Thank you all for joining us today. I would also like to express my gratitude to my colleagues at Academia Sinica for their hard work to make this event possible. I wish everyone a meaningful and enjoyable session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Liao. Now, please welcome Dr. Mei-Hua Chen.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, President Liao. It's a great honor to present the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Nadia Murad, to all of you. As you will see in the film we will have watched, thousands of women and girls were captured, enslaved, and subject to brutal sexual violence and trafficking during the ISIS occupation of northern Iraq in 2014. Nadia is just one of them. She eventually escaped with the help of a diverse anti-ISIS underground network that crossed religious and ethnic groups. She documented her wartime experience in her book, The Last Girl, 幸存的女孩. The Chinese edition was published by China Times Publishing in 2018. The same year, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. She has publicly talked about her experience of sexual violence during the war after she escaped. Anyone with a basic understanding of the nature of sexual violence knows how difficult it is to come forward to talk about those experiences. Her story is about how war criminals abuse their power and violate women's bodies, sexuality, and dignity in wartime. It is, however, also a story about a sexual survivor fighting back, showing resilience and empowering other women across the globe. In my view, her Nobel Peace Prize is highly significant, as it is the first time a sexual survivor in wartime won the Nobel Peace Prize. Moreover, she is one of the few survivors to take war crime sexual criminal to the International Criminal Court. Over the past few years, and she had founded Nadia's initiative, which aimed to campaign for sexual survivors in conflict and for ending the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war and a tool of genocide. Most of all, it served to rebuilding the community, rebuilding the country after war. Everything she experienced during the war, along with her activism over the past decade, embodied the spirit and meaning of the Nobel Peace Prize. Let's welcome Nadia Murad with most tremendous respect.
Hi, good afternoon. I didn't write anything, but because we're going to have a discussion, I just want to say that I'm really honored to be here, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my work and my story with all of you, the young generation, future change makers. I was thinking about the audience last night and how it's often very difficult to go to a new audience, and that especially that this is my first time in this part of the world, because I do want to leave you with a message and something that you can remember, but also that for you as students to understand. But at the same time, when we are new to something that it's so old, that conflict-related sexual violence, and yet it's very new to so many people, it's hard, it's hard to cover it in just 1 hour. But I will try my best because I know that a lot of you are interested in documenting rape as a weapon of war. A lot of you are interested in preventing it from happening, and many of you may know someone who has experienced violence even in here in this country or a friend from somewhere else. So I'm really, really honored to be here and looking forward to the conversation. Thank you to the university and everyone involved in this event. So let's start here. Yeah. Shishi, I think I learned how to say thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murad. Next, we will start with an introduction video that provides insights into Ms. Murad's background and contributions.
Officials in northern Iraq report that fighters of the Islamic militant group ISIS have carried out a massacre.
In between explosives laid by ISIS, entire sections of the city are destroyed.
We can see the people below, trapped on Sinjar Mountain.
ISIS soldiers would brag about conquering Yazidi women and wiping their religion from the face of the earth.
When I first began speaking out about conflict-related sexual violence, there was little global attention on this issue, even though it was and still is happening in wars around the world. In 2014, as I was preparing for my final year of high school, I witnessed a genocide. I lost loved ones and endured the trauma of captivity. When you are systematically attacked for your religion, when you are separated from your family, forced to flee your home, when you are bought and sold, raped and beaten, and referred to as property, the greatest gift someone can give is to recognize your full humanity. Survivors of sexual violence are often forgotten, their pain overlooked, their voices ignored. I founded Nadia's initiative to change that. I dedicate this award to all the young women like me who were raised in vulnerable communities by strong women.
I wish I had the strength of Nadia.
Having every reason to withdraw from the world.
We summoned the courage to stand up and say, no, no.
Nadia Murad, a young woman that we at 60 Minutes found in a refugee camp in Iraq. She found her voice. This young woman that we found in a refugee camp won the Nobel Peace Prize.
She became a global voice for justice and dignity and a sense of common humanity.
Nobel Peace Prize is recognizing efforts to end sexual violence during wartime. It was awarded to Dr. Denis Mukwege and Nadia Murad.
Survivors are not just victims. They are leaders, healers, and change makers. Change is only possible when we work with them, not without them.
Now, let's welcome our moderator, Dr. Mei-Hua Chen, and our speaker today, Ms. Nadia Murad, to the stage to begin today's session.
Thank you. So we will start to talk about Nadia's personal story. Nadia, can you share what motivated you to transform your personal experience into a global campaign?
Thank you. When I look back, I started something, sharing my story. All I knew was that I went through something and I survived and I was lucky and I needed to tell the world what was happening to my sisters, my nieces, my cousins, my classmates who were still in captivity. And I've said it so many times that the moment I survived, I felt that my survival carried with it a responsibility to share my story, but not only my story, but the stories of so many women and girls who were still in captivity. Every single female in my family was taken into captivity. And when I survived, I was the first. And, in less than 24 hours, my mother was murdered alongside her sister, 2 nieces, and 1 nephew in one mass grave. My 6 brothers were killed with almost every male in my village. I walked to the school in my village with everyone in my village, more than 1,700 people. We all were ordered to walk to the school, and there we were separated. And ISIS did open markets for women and girls. And the first market was outside of my village in Solah, where women, who were pregnant were taken into one market. Older women were killed, like my mother. Younger ones were taken to markets in Mosul and Syria. And this was all well documented. ISIS used social media platforms like Telegram, YouTube, Facebook, recruited people from all around the world. And the world was well aware of what ISIS was doing in Syria and Iraq, but there was not a lot of attention on how rape was used as a weapon of war to destroy our community and our families. And I shared my story on my way to my brother in the camps, because our home was destroyed, still under ISIS control. But I didn't know how to share and how to convince people or where to start, because everything was new to me and I was new to everything. I never met a journalist before in my village. I never left the village. I went to high school as the first one in my family. I was the youngest of 11 children raised by a single mother. So it was very difficult for me to share everything right away, because I'm also from a country where we don't even talk about women's rights, right? And sex and rape, even if it's carried by terrorists, it's stigmatized. There's so much shame and stigma around this topic. And I grew up there, and I heard so many stories of honor killings, violence against women in my own country. So I was well aware of the risk of sharing my story, but I had to, because someone needed to not take the blame and to tell the world what was really happening. So it started there, yeah.
I know it's very important that you can speak out about your experience in Iraq, but I also know that it's very painful to talk about sexual violence, particularly in wartime. So what gave you the strength? What gave you the strength to to speak out about your experience?
When I was in the camps as a displaced person, I didn't know the difference between, aid workers and journalists. It was, as I said, everything new to me, and people came up, doctors, aid workers, journalists came up with their own lists of questions for me. It was never about what I wanted to share. People came up with their questions of, just asking over and over again what I was wearing, how I felt, and if I could go back to the moment that we were raped or separated or the markets. But I was never given the chance to say, but why did I decide to share that story in a camp where I was so visible as a survivor of rape in that country, in that camp? And I learned from these, those experiences but I wanted to share more. I wanted to share how we can prevent this. I wanted to share how we can locate the girls who were in captivity, how we can stop people from, Europe and all around the world joining ISIS based on that ideology. So I had solutions. I had things to say that I thought they're going to help my family members in captivity in my country and so many other people in Iraq and Syria. And that really, it was very difficult, because if you share a story of rape, 2-3 times a day, by the end of the day, you just hate yourself. You hate yourself for sharing that. You hate yourself for giving people the opportunity to re-traumatize you over and over again. But at the same time, you think of it of, oh my God, people really don't know, they don't know a lot about it. They don't know how to approach survivors of rape. They don't know how to document rape as a weapon of war. They see it as a small thing, as a small side effect of war, and you have to share it over and over again to fix it. In my case, I was giving them information, but at the same time, I feel like I was educating them on how to document. And later, when I moved to Germany and I felt safer to share my story, I also learned that rape as a weapon of war was, it's not unique to the Yazidi community or what ISIS did. It's been used for so long. And I got to meet so many survivors from Congo, from Sudan, Colombia, and Ukraine. And I had, we had this community of survivors. And we all shared the same thing. Our experiences were different. We were raped and abused by different people. But at the end, we had something in common of how people treated us. They treated us as, stories. And based on that, I worked with more than 1,000 of them and with the UK government where we work on a code. It's a code of conduct. It's called the Murad Code. And the code is available in many languages, and it's free for anyone who is willing to document or work with survivors to make sure that they have the basic understanding of what to do and how to do it. Yeah.
So you develop a Murad code to how to help sexual survivors in wartime.
Yes,
Yeah.
survivors to know, because I signed on so many documents that were not in my language by foreigners coming to the camps and taking the stories. And that did prevent so many survivors. No one in my family, I'm the only one so far, 11 years later, to talk about rape. Yeah. But every time I'm with my sisters or nieces or cousins, I see the pain in their eyes. Mm-hmm. But they come back to me with their own excuses, saying, but, well, people use me in my story. How are they, sure that people will not do the same to them? Yeah. So it is helping survivors to know their rights, but also helping prosecutors, journalists, aid workers to also document while keeping their well-being in mind.
Yeah. And the other question is, Yazidi women was targeted by ISIS simply, probably also related to Yazidi community is kind of racial and religious and ethnic minority. Can you talk about this issue? Can you talk about it?
Yes, in ISIS, when they took over so many parts of Syria and Iraq, they committed war crimes against many communities, not only Yazidis, Muslim, Christians, and all communities in Iraq and Syria. But they had specific plans for each community based on their religions. So, for example, when we heard from other minorities like Christians in Mosul and other cities that where ISIS approached them, they give them options. They give them, options to leave the area or to pay taxes. So a lot of people decided to go to the north where ISIS didn't take over. So they were able to move out of Mosul and other places. But when they attacked us in Sinjar, they gave us two options: to convert or they will kill us. And that is that was the result of a long, campaign, decades of hate and misinformation about the Yazidis, that we are not people of the book, we're infidels, we don't believe in God, all these misinformations that for so long our own neighbors didn't really eat our food. I grew up on a farm where we will hire a Muslim friend to take our products to the market so people could buy. They thought, they were his products. But we couldn't take our products to cities like Mosul to sell them because they were considered not, halal and based on our religion. So all these misinformations and led to what, ISIS did in 2014. And unfortunately, so many people, not everyone, but a lot of our own neighbors believed in that ideology and joined ISIS overnight. And ISIS also used women's, their photos and names on social media, recruiting others. Just 2 weeks ago, we had a very successful case in Belgium where a Belgian citizen went and joined ISIS, and he bought and sold so many Yazidi women and girls for years. And then some of the survivors escaped, and we had, as in the video it showed and you mentioned, we work a lot on justice and accountability, and we were able to find the survivors through Nadia's initiative and bring them all to Belgium, and I gave my testimony, and he was convicted. But, those people who went from Germany and Belgium and Canada and other places, the UK, they took dangerous roads and crossed borders to Turkey and Syria and Iraq because they believed in that, and they joined them, and that is dangerous, where people believe that they can go to the end of the other side of the world because there is a community that they think they're infidels and need to be eradicated. That is very dangerous. But with the Yazidis, the specific thing was also women and girls. They didn't take any women and girls from other communities. In our community, they enslaved more than 6,500 women and children. And a lot of them until today, they're missing. A lot of them were killed in captivity, my nieces including, and we're still waiting for the world to just look for them, because some of them were children when they were taken into captivity, and they were forced to carry, ISIS children, and now they've been brainwashed. They don't even know if they have families left. So we have to look for them and bring them back.
Now I want to move to about how to bring the justice to Yazidi community and Yazidi women and girls. Although sexual violence in wartime is not a new issue in human history, however, you are the first sexual survivor to win the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm wondering, do you think Nobel Peace Prize make a difference in advocating the ending of sexual violence in wartime?
That's a really good question, because a lot of the times I feel that people think if you win Nobel, all of your problems are solved. But that's not the case. It's a recognition. Each recognition, when you're trying to make a change, when you're trying to do something like what I am doing, every recognition, every opportunity like this is important. And Nobel is, it's a great honor to be recognized by such committee, and especially alongside my dear friend, Dr. Denis Mukwege, who also has dedicated his life to the work and helping survivors in Congo for over 2 decades. But you get the recognition, and then you have to go and work. One thing that is good about Nobel is that you're able to, for example, reach people, get to meet people and meetings, and but if you carry it with you and take it to every meeting, it's not gonna help. It's just a recognition. It's opens, different doors, but at the end, it's up to you how to continue the work, how to let people know that, okay, you have Nobel, but it's not gonna solve everything, and the expectations that your work is done, it's not. So for me, it's been both a positive thing, but also can be challenging when you win it at especially at a young age, and then you are being recognized, and a lot of people think that your work is done.
Many victims in conflict zone, conflict-related sexual violence, they will choose to keep silent. But you are one of the few women go to the International Criminal Court to get justice. Could you talk about how you decide to bring your case to ICC?
You know, when I met my lawyer, Amal Clooney, back in 2016, I didn't know a lot about, the law and ICC and anything that is, just related to justice and accountability was so new to me. But I had one thing. My goal was to find an alternative to revenge. I went to Amal looking for an alternative because I grew up in a country and in a region in the Middle East where we only learned about revenge, and that if one community kills the other, the next thing is revenge. And same in countries where there is conflict, but also in countries where there is stability in the Middle East. So revenge was all that we even read in school. And for me, I wanted something else. I didn't know what, but I didn't want my family and my relatives to go do the same. I wanted an end, something that will give my community and my family and myself some closures, that we can all feel that what happened to us was wrong and it will never happen again. And Amal and I, we sat on the floor for 2 hours, and I shared everything with her, but at the end, before even telling me that she was going to take my case, she warned me. She said the road to justice is long and often it can be dark. And she was right. We have so much evidence, testimonies, and all collected by a UN team, a professional team, UNITAD, went to Iraq and collected the testimonies and evidence, exhumed mass graves, identified remains, and yet it is so challenging to convince governments and the international community to hold perpetrators accountable. But also, another case that Amal and I, we've been working on it is we have filed a lawsuit against a cement company, a French cement company. So this company was operating in Syria for so long when ISIS was in control, and they paid ISIS so much money just for letting them to operate, and this is a French company. And ISIS, we have documents, physical documents of ISIS using that money and buying and selling women, recruiting, foreigners. And it's been over 2 years that we're still fighting against that company, and we have the evidence and everything, but it takes time. It takes time, but also survivors have to come forward because there are their evidence and testimonies that they have. You cannot really do this without their testimonies. And a lot of them, as you mentioned, have decided to stay silent and don't want to come forward. Not long time ago, there was a case in Kosovo, and this ISIS member who came back from Syria, and he had my own sister-in-law. And they approached me if my sister-in-law wanted to go to the court, and she just simply told me, no, I am doing better in silence, and I respect that, her decision. A lot of them are just prefer not to.
It's very difficult to come out to talk about all these issues. And how do you view the role of international institutions such as UN, ICC, national government in addressing crime of sexual violence in conflict?
I mean, they have a very important role. survivors share it, we know, but also these groups, ISIS and like-minded groups, they're very, very open about it. And right now in Sudan, you know, we have been trying to work with some survivors through another organization that I co-founded, the Global Survivors Fund. But in Sudan, no one is even talking about it, how rape is being used as a weapon of war right now. A lot of women of, you know, women of specifically reproductive age are being targeted, so they get pregnant from the perpetrators, because another thing it was the same with Yazidi community, that a lot of women were forced to give birth to children to ISIS, because these individuals and perpetrators and groups, they know that they're not gonna stay forever. They know they will be defeated someday. So they always look for a way to leave a permanent mark on the communities they attack. And it's, you know, through forcing women to bear children and rape. And that is what is happening in Congo, in Ukraine, in Sudan right now. And you know, the UN, for example, or, you know, international community and ICC, they are well aware of this. They know that it's being used, rape is being used as a war, as a war crime, as a weapon for so long, but it was not recognized as a war crime until, you know, a few decades ago. But still, with all the stories we have, all the documentations, you have to go back to them over and over again to just make them take action. We work with the UN, and still we're working with them. For 11 years, we asked them to create a special task force to go to Syria and look for these women and children. Because organizations like mine, we cannot go to Syria. It's so complicated. We can't go and look for the missing women and children that were taken into captivity back 11 years ago. My sister-in-law, my niece, my nephew, they're all still missing in captivity. But we've not been able to convince them to look for them, and their families we have not given up, but you can't do it. You can't rescue thousands of women and children without the support of the international community.
I think what you just talked that's why UN talk about sexual violence in conflict zone is kind of tool of genocide. It's kind of ethnic cleaning for a whole ethnic group. I'm wondering, how can governments and global institutions better support survivors-led movement?
It's also a challenge, but it's something that we have been working on it for so long. I was just in Colombia about a week ago, and I met so many survivors of rape in Colombia. And for them, it was, for example, we talked about reparations in Colombia, and they were so happy about the collective form of reparations, but they said it doesn't work for all of them. They need individual forms of reparations. What works for, you know, one survivor may not work for the other. And that is something that they've been asking for decades. And they had the same challenges with justice and accountability. And they had the same issues with a lot of them were blamed for what happened to them, right? And these organizations, the international communities, we must work with survivors. If we want to help them, you have to work with them. Their needs are very specific and very different. And I know, because I work with so many of them, and I know that when we talk, for example, about reparations, we think that it's just financial support. But a lot of them cannot even take financial, they cannot take money because they don't want their families who are not supporting them to know that they're getting paid for for being raped. So what we do, for example, in Kosovo, a lot of these women will go to a beauty salon saying that they're going to get their hair done, but there we provide psychological support. So even psychological support is not something that some communities or families allow into their lives. So it is important to work with them when we get the chance. In Iraq or in Sudan and Congo, the needs are different. Iraq is so different than Congo. Congo is different than Colombia, and sometimes the international community in the UN have one solution for all, but it doesn't work because their experiences and where they came from is very different. So you can not create one solution for all survivors of rape. You have to act based on where they are from, what are their needs, and that is important, yeah.
It's very, very thoughtful. I'm wondering what lesson can other post-conflict society or sexual survivor in conflict learn from your experience of advocating for accountability?
First, I want them to know that they're not alone. Because when it happened to me and my family, we thought we were alone. And to my community, we thought we were alone. We thought that it didn't happen to any other communities in the world, or especially for women and girls. So knowing that you're not alone in this fight and that someone else has done it before you, it's so motivating to know that it is possible. When you are fighting for justice and accountability for survivors of rape, and you know that in a country survivors were able to achieve that, it just motivates you to keep fighting because you know that it is possible to do it. And the other thing is that people will tell you to forgive. That's how you're gonna heal. This is what I've been recently hearing from many survivors, that people telling them if you forgive, you will be able to move forward. But it's not true. It's not forgiving. No survivor should be forced to forgive perpetrators, those who raped them and abused, their rights and everything. That that they should not be forgive just because someone else thinks it's better for your own mental health. You have to believe in what is best for you, and healing is so different. It's a process. When you experience rape and violence, healing is not just a straightforward, process. Some days are good. Some days you can be at the court and get, successful outcomes, and you still don't feel anything. And there are days like, when you are with a friend or a therapist or an event like this, and you feel that you're doing better. So I want the communities, I want survivors, my fellow survivors, to know that they're not alone, that justice, as my lawyer said, it takes time, but it's possible.
Now talk about the Nadia's initiative and reconstruction. Could you talk about what led you to found Nadia's initiative?
I would have not done this work without my family and my husband. So it is a very, very emotionally difficult journey, and the work, it's not work for me. It's just sharing your experience every single day with different people, and sometimes it's just you don't get the outcome that you hope for. And there were so many times before founding Nadia's initiative. There were so many times where I was this close to give up. I thought I was done, and that this will be I will be in New York, and I would say, this is the last time. Or a journalist will ask me really horrific questions, and I will be telling myself, promising myself that that was the last interview I was going to give. But then I will go home and to an empty apartment where my loved ones were still in captivity, where my eyes were all the time on my phones, hoping that one of them will call, that someone will survive, that what we saw where they were killing men and women was just a dream and it was not true, and hopefully they are also prisoners and not being killed. So there were always, reasons that I wanted to give up, but also reasons that I wanted to keep going. And I founded Nadia's initiative also based on different experiences that I had in the camps. A lot of, almost all Yazidis from Sinjar were displaced inside their own country. And I was one of the lucky ones to move to Germany with my sister, but there were hundreds of thousands of people who were waiting for the same opportunity. And a lot of them were, the traffickers will go to them, smugglers, promising them to take them to Germany, but then leave them in Greece or Belarus and Lithuania. So I had to advocate, especially in Europe, asking governments if they were willing to take Yazidis in a legal way. And I did the same in Canada, Australia, and the US. But as you know, the number of displaced people around the world today is more than 100 million people. And with more conflicts, as we see in climate disaster, the number only increases. And there is no country in the world that can take, all these refugees. So we have to think and work on more sustainable solutions for displaced people, and especially for those who are willing to go back. So that was the goal of Nadia's initiative, to convince governments to take people legally, but if they're not, then convincing them to focus on a sustainable solution instead of just giving money to the camps where for so long was no longer working.
So from the video, you set up the Nadia initiative, also set up a women's center in Xinjiang. Can you talk about the center?
Yeah, the Women's Center, it's the first of its kind in my region. There are no other women's centers in there, and it's just a really big step to take in that region for women, and a space for specifically women and girls. Growing up, I thought I will open a beauty salon. I loved the idea of having women and girls around. And I said one day when I get support, if we do good 1 year on the farm, my mother will help me and I will open a beauty salon and I will invite women in the village. There were no spaces for women. I was lucky to make friends in school, but my sisters who didn't go to school only had, the family members around them and were not able to meet other women and girls. So that was the plan. But unfortunately, everything changed when ISIS attacked us. And with the Women's Center, it was not just my idea, but we did workshops with survivors, with women and girls, not only Yazidis, but other communities. And they all agreed that they needed a space to share their stories, to learn, to heal, to share things with each other. And it's been just amazing to see how many women and girls have benefited from different programs we have, and just a space for them. Yeah.
Kind of social gathering for local women. Yeah. And in my opinion, you combined many different methods to run the global campaign. For example, publish the books using social media and visiting world leaders. In your view, what are the most difficult parts when you engage in this global campaign? And what does the global solidarity means to you and Yazidi community?
It is so important for the world to know. If we want to prevent rape as a weapon of war in other, future conflicts or the current conflicts that are taking place, you have to raise awareness. You have to talk about it. And it's not, it's good that, the media covers it or world leaders talk about it or the UN, but it's so important that they listen to survivors themselves, sharing their stories and how to prevent it. I thought that if I give my testimony one time at the UN, that it will be enough. But then I went for the second and third, and now I lost count of how many times I have given my testimony at different places at the UN or to different people. And each time you remind them that they have not done what they're supposed to do. You remind them of their responsibilities. And it is clear that they know what are their responsibilities, but to convince them, to push them, take action, they always have excuses. Always excuses or how they cannot reach survivors in Sudan, or how it's difficult to find perpetrators or political will to just hold them accountable. I think what I'm really tired of it is all these excuses of not acting, not preventing. And let's be very clear that there are always clear signs when something like what happened to Yazidis. There are always clear signs that it's going to happen. When ISIS attacked my village, for 2 weeks we were surrounded by ISIS, and you will read it in my book. For 2 weeks we had our phones, and we were calling everyone and saying that they have given us 2 options, and if you don't do something, they will kill all the men and take the women. They are here to take women to markets, to buy them and sell them. And we were not able to convince a single politician or anyone to just even try. No one even tried, our government included, to rescue close to 2,000 people until ISIS just came and divided us into different groups and killed the ones that they wanted, took the others. And ever since that, I just learned that there are signs. And we know that every time, same in Ukraine, in Sudan, there were signs. And if we can prevent it when we see these signs, it's the best thing you can do. Because if you fail, then it takes decades to repair and to get things done.
Do you see women's roles in peace building and post-conflict reconstruction across the globe?
The role is very, very critical because women are specifically attacked because of their role in the society, in the community, in the families. So why not giving them a chance in the peace building process, right? Why should we go, for example, even in my own community, why should the world go to specific leaders in my community, whether they're religious leaders or politicians, and make decisions and come up with solutions for women? It's not going to work if you don't have them included in the process, whether it's accountability, peace building. It's not going to work when we make decisions about them without them being at the table. So that is something. It's, for example, in my community, it's very new. In my country, it's new. For so long, the government, religious leaders, and others made decisions about women in the country, in different communities and societies. So we are changing that because these things didn't work for us, and they only led to more and more violence against women.
And what advice would you give to young women human rights defenders facing intimidation or burnout because a lot of heavy workload?
I mean, when you put yourself out there, it's not going to be easy. I think we live in a world where not only for younger people, for everyone, if you have an opinion, if you have something new and you want to make change, people just say, okay, this is not the right place, go somewhere else. And I've been told so many times to go to different countries, and I go to them, they will say, well, go to someone else, this is not what we do, or this is not the area that we work, and you have to keep looking until you find your people. Yes, it's not easy, and it can be difficult to just do the work when you know that a lot of people who have heard your story and know how important your work is, and they still don't do anything. I've always said that in my journey, 9 out of 10 calls always go unanswered. So if you get 1 out of 10 answered, go for that person. It can be your professor, your classmate, your family member, a friend. Just find the people that you know they care about the work, and everything else will come later. Because we were talking about it earlier, that a lot of younger people ask me, and especially students, how they can go to the UN and share their work or what they're doing. UN is always there. It's not, hopefully not going anywhere, but what is not there and what you need is, people that believe in you, people that will celebrate you when you win Nobel, but also celebrate you when you are failing and making mistakes. And those are the people that I'm, grateful for, and people that are inspiring me and pushing me every day to do the work.
We now have some questions gathered from the audience when they register to the talk. The first one is, reflecting on your 11 years of advocacy, what are the most important lessons you have learned about justice, resilience, and the global response to human suffering? And the second is, I think it's proposed by the same person. How can governments and international communities better support survivors to become agents of change rather than symbols of tragedy? And the third one is, after suffering those terrible sins, how do you see the humanity?
Okay, the first one, we need to go back. Reflection on it.
The first one is, what lesson you have learned about justice, resilience, and global response to human suffering?
The lessons that I've learned about justice is, you think that what happened to you, if you share what happened to you with lawmakers, with politicians, with lawyers, you will be able to see result right away. And you think that what happened to you, people don't want to see that happening against anybody else, but it's not always the case. The lessons I have learned from taking this role of fighting for justice and accountability, and especially as someone who was really new to this fight of justice and accountability, you always need to bring in new evidence. You always need evidence. One story or 10 stories are not enough. You need, solid evidence. You need to document and witnesses. And, in the case, for example, in Belgium, one survivor was not enough. And my testimony alone was not enough. And even though this person went from Belgium, and his own mother sent him more than 60,000 euros while he was raping and buying and selling these women, it was still not enough to convince the court. So one thing is that you will need evidence, and you don't know how this is going to work. You just believe them. I have never asked any country on, how to hold their own nationals, for example, accountable. I say, here are the evidence, and then it's up to you on how to do it. But there's always more and more and more needed. Mm-hmm. And that is sometimes to make you just give up on the case. Yeah.
It's good that you can insist so far, and all the determination you show in the past decades. And the second question is, how can government and institutional community better support survivors to become agents of change?
Work with them, treat them as change makers and not just victims or stories. Treat them as human beings with families, with dreams and hopes. A lot of the times survivors are treated as stories. We give our stories and then we leave, and then we're never treated as just, survivors, change makers. A lot of people started calling me as a victim, but I never called myself a victim. Something happened to me, but I survived. I was able to turn that pain into something bigger, to make sure that, as I said in my book, that I will be the last girl in the world with a story like mine. But as long as we treat them as just stories and victims, it's not going to help us or them. But when we invite them and give them the platform to share their opinions, their testimonies, and not pushing them for what we want to hear. This is very common among survivors. They're always pushed to go into details about that specific moment. And that is not helping anybody but the perpetrators, because it gives them the chance of impunity and get away with that. But when we invest in survivors, we empower them, we give them the opportunity to be who they wanted to be, that's where we see result and change.
After suffering for all these terrible things, how do you see humanity?
I mean, I have seen both of, the good and bad side of humanity. And I try to focus on the good side, because focusing on the bad side of what I saw of humanity, it's only gonna destroy me and not those who try to destroy me. So I am, despite everything that happened to me, I'm a person with hope. I always, carry hope, and even in the darkest moments of my life, I was hopeful, and I believe it was that hope that made me go and knock on a door and get, the support that I needed to survive. So I'm always trying to focus on the good side of humanity.
In your opinion, what ordinary people could do to improve the sexual violence in conflict?
They can do so much, and right now, first thing is we need to educate ourselves about this issue. A lot of people don't know about it. When we think of war, we just think of weapons being used, how many people being killed, how much land being taken, but we rarely read in details about rape as also as a huge part of that war. So learning about that is so important. And you all will go out there, and if you're in diplomacy, in journalism, and humanitarian work, you will meet people like me, and you will interact with them. And it's so great when you are prepared on how to just approach them and understanding them. So the first step is to educate ourselves, to learn about this, and to share it. This holiday season, when you see people and books like this, to share with them, with friends, with classmates, to say, well, we need to talk about this. We need to be able to share it with others. But outside of that, it's also, in many countries around the world, what is global is that the shame and stigma that is associated with rape. I have met people from America, Canada, Latin America, Europe, who you think people, women, and girls who live in countries that are so great, and yet they have experienced violence, and they have been silent because their families or partners or communities stigmatize that. So we have to share it and talk about it, because that's the only thing that contributes into destigmatizing rape.
And another question is about individuals with little power and influence. How can we make contribution to save girls in countries with extreme sexual violence issue? I think this question is quite similar to the one you just answered.
Yeah, but my only comment on that is that no one is with little power. You all have so much power. You have to just know how to use it.
And what does reparation means for victims of wartime sexual violence? How does it differ from reparation for victims of war in general?
Reparations mean recognition, and especially when it's from your own country. I know the Iraqi government, for example, in the case of Yazidis, didn't do a lot, but they were able to pass a law, survivors' law, and provide reparations to survivors. And for the first time since the genocide, Yazidi survivors felt recognized by their own government, their own country. So it is recognition. But then when it comes to individuals, survivors, it means different things as we have worked with them. For some is psychological support, other financial support, is others who just want to leave that country in a way that they don't want to ever go back. We have worked with some survivors who they want to rebuild their shelters. For example, it's so many different things based on where you work and their needs. But the most important thing about reparations is that it just acknowledges what happened to you, and in a way that also makes survivors feel that what happened to them was wrong, and that they're worthy, and they feel connected to the society, and the reintegration of survivors once again is an essential thing, and it can really start with reparations.
Yeah, thank you. And the other question is, what do you think about sexual assault by abuse of authority?
I mean, that is also, it's really based, you have to go and talk to different survivors. For me, assault is assault, whether it's by authorities or a terrorist or abuse, it's the same. And I say that because I know people who were abused by the authorities, right? And the experience is the same when your body is seen as just worthless, when your body is seen as nothing but being abused and raped. And that is the same if it's being carried by, governments or, armed groups or anyone, even if it's a family member. For me, it's the same when someone believes that your body should be abused.
We also get some questions earlier this morning. The first one is, what keeps your hope alive when confronting ongoing violence, indifferences, or political obstacles?
I get to meet people through this work. I get to travel, and I know that a lot of people share the same hope to see live in a better world, to see that the next generation, hope that the next generation does not deal with what we are dealing with right now. And you didn't have to come and listen to me and something that is happening on the other part of the world, on the other side of the earth. You didn't have to come and give me your time to learn about Iraq and terrorists and violence against women or my own family, but you have hope and you believe in my fight and in my cause. And that is, for me, it's what motivates me and gives me hope. And hope is something that it can also be dangerous, because I will go back to when our village was surrounded by ISIS for 2 weeks, and we were very hopeful that there's no way the world will give up on us, all the women and girls. And that hope was so strong until it was killed by bullets and rape and destruction. But at the same time, I do feel that we need hope to be able to make it through the world that is right now very, very challenging for even people who don't live in conflict zones.
Could you think about how could Taiwan support your job? Maybe donation?
Well, I want to know why you all laughed, because I think we can, and we've done. We were able to work during COVID and they delivered so many, thousands of masks and gloves and stuff for survivors and their families in Iraq. And it was really important because in Iraq, and especially in my hometown, where people went back and COVID hit and we didn't know what to do. They needed stuff, and we were able to get them from here. And there is so much more that I believe we can work together on with survivors, with students, raising awareness, and making sure that we don't think about it as something that it's Middle Eastern or it's their problem. And that sense of solidarity that you mentioned it's really what we need.
Thank you. How the personal experience turn into political activism, because there is a limit for personal to move into broader social scenes.
I had to fight. I had to fight every single day, and I continue to fight. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it was not easy, and I did feel that I was going to quit, and I wanted to give up. And there were times where I regret sharing my story, and it was something that I thought I did it that because people will react positively, but not only one did the same. And people took advantage of me. People close, try to translate for me, or who were supposed to translate for me, or people who were supposed to just accompany me to meetings, and they took advantage of that. They used it for their own social media platforms, for their own political campaigns, and that is so difficult it's difficult to keep moving when you know that people you've trusted that can help you, but use that for their own benefits. But for me, as I said at the beginning, I think the reason always goes back to my own family. When I grew up in a very, very big family, 11 siblings, and 7 of my brothers were married and they had kids, and my mother, and we didn't have much, but we had a dignified life. We were happy together, and we never imagined our lives outside of Kocho, of Iraq, and to see every single one of my family being treated differently. 3 of my sisters-in-law were pregnant when their husbands were killed and they were taken into captivity. They gave birth in captivity, carried their own kids, and walked towards safety. My sisters who were taken, 5 of them, and raped and bought throughout Iraq and Syria. My beloved nieces who were with me, younger than me, tried so hard, and both were killed in captivity, and until today, their remains have not been identified. So when everything that you grow up loved, and people, not only your homes and the dreams you had, but the loved ones, your life is never going to be the same. And my only wish every day, and especially during holidays, I just don't want any other family to go through what my family went through.
What kind of data, research, or documentation do you think would be the most helpful to collect, alongside story and testimony, to strengthen global advocacy effort on sexual violence?
This is something, testimonies are important, but what the UN team that Amal and I worked on it's called UNITAD. That work was, we were able to convince all the members at the UN to pass a resolution to create a professional UN team to go to Iraq and document. These evidence are really important because they're collected by experts, people who are experts in this specific field. They know what part of a testimony, for example, is important, not the whole story. And they have thousands of names of people who committed these crimes. Some of them are alive, some of them have left Iraq and Syria and living their lives in Europe. And these teams their work is so important because they're experts, and the way they collect evidence and detail and use it in future when there are cases and to hold ISIS accountable or to learn from the Yazidi genocide how to prevent that and against other communities future atrocities it's very important. Stories are essential, testimonies are a huge part of it, but to have a team that is supported by the international community to do it in a professional way, that in the future, that's what also governments more, they rely more on that.
Another question, I think the last one. I teach undergraduate students, many of whom care deeply about gender justice but feel discouraged by global hostility toward women. What message would you like young women, especially those hoping to work in this field, to carry with them?
My message is that you may know that it's when it comes to women's rights and gender equality, there are so many forces always trying to push us back. And there are also forces who are trying to help us, voices and organizations, individuals. And you need to find those people who are fighting for the same issues. Because when it comes to the fight for gender equality and the fight against violence against women, in every country there are people who are fighting for. Even in countries where, like Afghanistan, where it's so dangerous to even be a woman, you're not allowed to go out there. But believe me, there are still people who work from inside Afghanistan for women's rights. So there are, yes, I join you in that it's so hard to keep the work and fighting when you know that there are so many powerful forces trying to take us back, centuries back, through old traditions and religion and political agendas, being used. But there are also powerful people, individuals, organizations, communities who are fighting back. So let's join them against the other side.
Thank you. Thank you for Nadia doing such a long interview again. And I think...
Was it long? I thought it was short because the questions are...
Okay, thank you.